The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I want to welcome you to our first career guidance webinar, What It Takes to Break into the Public Relations Industry. Just some quick housekeeping before we get started. Due to the size of the audience, everyone is muted, but if you have any questions throughout the presentation, just type them into the chat box and we'll do a Q&A at the end, and we'll try to get to as many questions as we can. My name is Tammy Nicholson. I'm the Program Manager for Career Training USA here at InterExchange. For those of you who are unfamiliar with InterExchange, we're a nonprofit cultural exchange organization based in New York City. We administer various cultural exchange programs to help students and young professionals undertake meaningful cultural exchange opportunities in the US and across the world. And specifically, the Career Training Program administers the J1 Intern and J1 Trainee Visa programs. So we provide visa sponsorship to those who have already secured internships or training programs in the United States. And while a sponsor is required by the US government for anyone seeking a J1 visa, in addition to helping individuals help with their paperwork, we also provide pre-departure and settling in resources, and we check in with participants throughout their program to make sure they're safe, their well-being is taken care of, they're engaging in cultural activities, and also just to ensure their program satisfaction. Like many of you, we've had to reconfigure our work and our lives over the last couple of months. So while we've had to temporarily pause the issuance of sponsorship and to welcome interns and trainees to the US, we want to continue to resource students and professionals seeking professional development experiences. So to that end, we decided to roll out webinars from panels of industry experts who share their experience and advice. And today actually kicks off this series, so I'm pleased to be joined by our first two panelists. First, I'd like to introduce Sally Fischer, the founder and CEO of Sally Fischer PR. Sally attended high school and university in Florence, Italy, and then she returned to New York City afterwards. She's worked for a variety of Italian and US companies based here in New York City. And after gaining PR perspective from a variety of different fields, she opened her own public relations firm. And today, Sally Fischer PR works to help Italian companies that are seeking to develop a presence here in the United States. I'm also joined by Rosalind Batheja, the Director of Operations for and New Business at Novita PR. Rosalind grew up in South Africa and began her marketing and PR career in London. And with over 10 years of marketing and public relations experience in varying industries ranging from fashion to media, Ros moved to Novita PR, a public relations agency that's also based in New York City that services design and architecture clients. She serves as the Director of Operations and New Business. So thank you, Sally, and thank you, Ros, for joining us today.
Pleasure.
My brief introductions probably definitely don't do either of you justice. So perhaps maybe to kick us off, you can tell us a little bit more in your own words about your organizations and your roles. And Sally, maybe we can start with you.
Sure thing. I mean, first and foremost, I just think it's so terrific that you guys have been quick on your feet to understand that this is a time that everybody could use as much support as possible. And you've reached out to both Roz and myself to lend a helping hand to students and, people who are right now seeking to learn more about the job market and specifically about PR. I've been in PR for so many years. Actually, I think I started in PR in high school. I was made chairman of the social activities club in my high school in New York City. I grew up in Manhattan. And, my class decided in 10th grade that they would make me responsible for the school benefits, the school prom. And I've just always been a go-getter and interested in socializing and social activities and the community. And, when I had the opportunity to go to Italy when I was 16 as an exchange student in high school, I really cultivated that, international aspect of my interests, in that I really took an interest in looking at different people and understanding the differences between the communities that I came from, New York, and really only New York because I was only 16, and then Italy and Florence, specifically. And I guess that I was able to see how I could best, when I moved back to New York, how, one can perceive Italians from America but also how Americans could perceive Italy from the United States. And I decided pretty early on that I had a talent that, you know, could well be used for others, that was understanding both of these countries, communities, people, etc. So, you know, I have to say that I got a series of questions that I know we're going to be talking about today, but I guess that, you know, what I've been best at, having come from New York, gone to Italy, gone to a very small city, which is Florence, to live, and then back to New York City, the only two places I've ever lived, you know, I could say that, you know, my world has been a very provincial one in a very big way, but in a small way too. And that today, as we face a very new world, I go back and I look at, you know, my background in PR, and I think I'm so lucky that communication is what I'm in, because it's so important right now.
And then for myself, so I started, as Taman mentioned, I grew up in South Africa, and I studied, actually my degree was in economics and accounting. And I found that, you know, while studying that, I used to spend my summers, I have family in the UK, and I used to fly out and work over the summer and over the Christmas period in retail stores. And whenever the marketing and the PRs used to come in, I used to always want to talk to them. And I found this huge fascination for what they did and how they took the product and, you know, marketed to the people coming into the store, to the press, everything, the whole 360 picture. And I found that even though I had the business degree, my interest lay in public relations. And so after I graduated, I moved to London. I landed up working in fashion PR. And I spent a brief hiatus in Holland. I lived there for a year. And then I came back to London and changed from fashion into media. I landed up working in sports and B2B PR for Sky Television at the time. And then about 5 years ago, we moved to the United States. And that's where I met with Christina Batheja, who is the president and founder of Novita Communications. And we're in the design and architecture world. So again, still staying in PR, but just a different field. I moved across from.
I've called your agency Novita my entire. Not I now hear that it's print because I give it an Italian accent.
Well, it does mean the news, so we just say Novita here. But yeah, so moved across and been there 5 years and have loved every moment as the team evolves. Even today, with a lot of change happening, it's been something that we have taken on as a team and we discuss, and it's a wonderful place to be in.
Excellent. I think you both kind of talked about the elephant in the room and maybe the change in all industries, but including communications and public relations. What professional development experiences did either of you pursue early in your careers that have helped you to adapt and prepare for these upcoming changes? I think that a lot of industries will see in the next few years.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I mean, prepare for them. Who could have ever prepared for this? But by the same token, and something I'll address because I think this is more the question, what are some of the things that one needs to do to be a good PR person? And if you are, then it's inherent in you to be prepared, I believe. Because if you're curious, first of all, if you're a steady person who's interested in research and repetitive activities and staying connected and all of those things that we do every second, 24/7 in PR, you know, you have to really be interested. And one of the things, if you said to me, Tom, and what's one of the most important things I could be doing right now to stay connected, I would say that, you know, we should be looking at newspapers, reading everything possible that we possibly can. We should be watching the news. We should be deciding who the people are who are our leaders. So how does one prepare? They need to keep an open mind. They need to keep their ears open. They need to keep reading and stay curious. PR is all about staying connected. LinkedIn, I mean, I don't want to go on and on because I know you're going to ask particular questions and I don't want to touch on them. So I'm just going to respond to that, which is, how do you prepare? It's like if you're preparing after 9/11, what did we do? We went out and we purchased food and ropes to climb out the window and, all these various things. So what are we doing now? I'm, doing the best I can to stay in tune with what's going on so that I can offer my clients the best advice I possibly can.
Yeah, and I think, we're in the field of communications, and right now to stay connected, you need to communicate, and that's right where we're at, from social to digital, every level that we can use is important to ourselves as individuals as well as our clients. And so we're utilizing all of that. We're also a very creative industry, no matter what sector you're in, public relations is just naturally creative, and we are pivoting constantly between these different worlds of in-person meetings to virtual meetings. And it's been amazing watching and seeing this change as it happens.
With the caveat that public relations is maybe a lot of changes that might happen on a day-to-day basis, what does the average day look like at both public relations firms?
So this is a perfect example of, average days. I'm sorry, we're bouncing off one another all of a sudden, something. So are we good?
I'll mute myself and I'll let you respond.
Thank you. My average day used to be never average. I would go in the morning and we'd sit as an équipe, as a group, and we'd discuss what's on our plate, and then we'd get something from a client, and we'd go from, because I didn't explain this, but I went from working in film PR, that was my beginning, to working in fashion PR, being director of public relations for Benetton, a fashion company out of Italy. But I was with them in the United States for many years and opened 800 stores with them all over America and Canada, North America. And, to me, that meant that I became familiar with business PR, fashion PR, social PR, and this was in the days before influencers. So we really were working with newspaper people, all the media. I was dealing with covers. And the other part of it is that I was dealing with great stories that were wonderful cover stories that went to crisis management, because Benetton, went from being the best to the worst while I was there. And I say the worst only because we grew to have, lawsuits, and from 800 stores, it shrunk to 20 stores. So, that meant that I was in the Wall Street Journal on the cover page with a positive story. And then 5 years later was in the Wall Street Journal on the cover with a negative story. So I had to learn crisis management, which I had learned in entertainment PR, because, celebrities make big faux pas, as do all human beings. So, but, in my day, we didn't have everybody walking around with a camera in their hands. So what's a normal day like before COVID? It would have been to be flexible and to know that you come in hoping to touch all your bases, see where your clients are at, look at your social media, look at all of your email immediately so that you know what's on, and have a plan, but be flexible and ready to change that. What's it like during COVID? There is no normal, and every day is either exactly the same or it's a new normal.
So for us, we have a number of us who work remotely. I'm in Northern Westchester, which is just north of New York City. And we have one person in Minnesota, someone in the West Coast, someone else in Massachusetts, and 2 down in Georgia. So usually for the New York team, pre-COVID, we'd all come into the New York City office, meet, touch base with our clients and often go to events, especially around, there's so many things going on in the design community every evening in New York. So since this has happened, we've taken that all and moved virtually. And the teams who work remotely, it's business as usual for them. They know we're on Slack, we're on Zoom, we're constantly talking. Now as a team, we do that every single day. We touch base with each other just for half an hour, just to share news, etc., on a face-to-face virtual level. But we've had Slack, and that is something that we communicate constantly through sharing information, sharing links and news. So that's kind of our day now. And it's just been a lot more communication, speaking to clients a lot more, seeing how we can change and adapt with them to move events that they may have planned during this time. Spring is a very busy time in New York City for the design community, and how we're taking those to make it all virtual as opposed to just stopping.
Yes, exactly. All of our events. We had 5 events between February and June planned. 5 of them, and each one of them has been either postponed, made virtual, or moved to next year. I mean, very disconcerting because we had worked so hard. I think I have several interns on this call, and they know how hard we work. And, what we were doing was, setting up, building pillars to create wonderful events. And for the moment, I do not foresee a public event happening until 2021.
Do you foresee virtual events becoming the new normal?
No, I think it'll be a mix. On into 2021. I mean, once we have an some sort of organization, I mean, things will be changed, and what we've seen is that we can do virtual events, and they are successful. So it will be a mix. I mean, these Zoom calls are so successful. So, I mean, why wouldn't you continue to do a mix of them, and definitely support your events with partial, and also it saves so much money. I mean, in our case, we have thousands of people moving back and forth between different countries.
Yeah, I think, as Sally said, there will be a mix, but there's still that sense of touch and feel, that sense that we don't want to lose. So being able to meet up and see a product in person, it's the same, analysis of people shopping online versus retail. Yes, there has been a shift to online, but retail has not gone away completely. There's still the bricks and mortar element.
That makes total sense. What other changes or trends do you foresee emerging that will affect the public relations industry, and that might impact current students or recent graduates as they consider entering this industry over the next couple of years? I mean, if you're looking into your crystal balls and just speculating here.
Well, I think one thing that was trending incredibly was that people were opening up PR agencies left and right without really, one client was making a PR agency. And I think that it had gotten to the point where it was so unbelievably overburdened with too many, PR has become the new, I don't know, Nutella. I don't know what even to compare it to. But I think that now a trend will be that more serious people who really are involved deeply in the true practice of PR will stay involved. I mean, we're going to see, Roz and I talked about this together, there's going to be a shakeup of press. So our bread and butter, magazines and, even influencers, how is it going to look? So I think that the trends will show themselves. It's hard to tell right now, but certainly the industry will have changed, and people who really understand it are going to need to stay on board and stay very close to listening.
I think also from a people level, the remote working is going to be almost a new norm. there's going to be so many meetings. We'd be like, do we really have to do that in person? Do we need to come into the office? Can we do this from home? And, that's always been something as a benefit, but should it be a benefit, or is it the new norm? I don't know yet. I don't have this crystal ball. It's something we've been working on as an agency over the last 5 years. And we've taken baby steps, but we've actually found it works fantastic. We work harder, we're more efficient, we're more connected. And through this whole time, we literally, when we had to shut our office on March 13th, we locked the door and we're ready to go. And it was that easy for us, which is great. It's now just moving what we do as a business. How do we change that?
Yeah, I feel like that's a question that a lot of companies have been struggling with the last few months, and it's I think great to hear that both of your organizations were in positions to kind of make the changes needed and to remain flexible, because that's ingrained into what you do on a day-to-day basis. I do want to talk a little bit about your own backgrounds, your international backgrounds that you both have, and also the international clients that both of your organizations service. How does that play into your individual company's decision to host interns, whether they are domestic U.S. interns or international interns?
Well, for me, I know that I appreciate both. I mean, we have relationships with certain universities in the United States, and certainly our summer internship program is a lovely one. Before COVID, it used to be robust and a larger group of people than I think we're going to be able to support in the future. But I think that that because we work often with Italy, we definitely have a lovely program with several universities, Bocconi, Ulm, and La Cattolica in Milan, Rome, John Cabot in Rome. We've also had interns from Germany, from France, from Portugal, from England. It's so refreshing to have a perspective on the world. We've had Israeli. One of my most wonderful memories is really the relationships that I've created with my interns over the years. I couldn't have done it without it. Literally, I opened my door 25 years ago, and I was myself, my assistant, and an intern, and she was a student at FIT. And it was fantastic from the get-go, and I've never stopped. I've had Barnard, Sarah Lawrence, Harvard. I don't think there's a university that we haven't worked with over the years. Wash U, Syracuse, the Newhouse School. I mean, it's just been a terrific relationship with working with Americans. So the American students tend to know more about the United States press, and they can speak to, real relationships with our press, the newspapers, the magazines. Lots of them look at Vogue or GQ or Vanity Fair. And the Italians or the Europeans bring in a political perspective, and they read a lot. They are, they're still reading books, and they're very connected to their country, so they're bringing their customs and traditions with them and sharing them. I mean, we had a wonderful experience in our office early on after New Year's, where we had a young Italian-American intern who brought in baked goods from, Italy that she had made herself, and the Italians were so happy to have them. And we had a wonderful Indian woman from Sarah Lawrence who was studying at Sarah Lawrence, a girl from India who's now back in India. And she had never tasted. I mean, it's just like, how great is it to share cultures and enjoy each other and every day come in and learn somebody else's tradition. I mean, we're not there for that reason, but because PR is social and because we're communicating with one another as well as with others, it's great to bring your expertise, which is, in my case, having lived abroad, knowing what that brings to the mix, I love continuing in that way and continuing to allow young people to come over here and be a part of us. Oh,
We've had interns, that have started as students and have actually landed up coming onto the team. Our executive vice president, Danielle McWilliams, she started with us 18 years ago as an interned during her university years at Lafayette. And then when she graduated, joined the team and has worked, with Christine all the way through to an EVP level now. From our international students that come and join us, we absolutely, we work with a number of clients in Germany and Italy. Bringing in the language skills is great help, and also the cultural skills. Sometimes when we need to travel or need someone who needs to know the area a little bit more, they offer a lot of insight. And also being students, they're at the front of all the social media and digital know-how, and they offer us a lot of skills. And being on the front edge and the front forward step on that has been really useful. And we both learn from each other as well as mentor and train them back.
Sorry, I lost my mute button for a second. So what are some of the traits you look for in an intern candidate, and how do those traits differ from when you're hiring maybe a full-time staff member?
great question. I mean, Roz kind of approached some of that already, because she said that they often hire some of their interns, which we have as well. And it's a great way to know that you're going to have a member of your staff that you really believe in, because if they've worked with you as an intern, they've seen you at your best, they've seen you at your worst, they've done so much, pre-work with you and training, that by the time they're on board, they're sort of your perfect person. We've hired probably 5 people over the years that started off as interns, and I can tell you that many of them have been some of my best employees. But what are we looking for, and how are they different from an employee per se? So I'm always looking for, regardless of whether they're an employee or an intern, somebody who cares and is curious. I think a great PR person is also somebody who is kind and thoughtful. I really think that, kind and thoughtful is a great place to begin, because if you are, rejection is not going to hit you as hard as it might to somebody who starts off their day being the glass is half empty. Also, research, that you really have to care. To this day, I spend hours researching something, hours, especially now since we're on this COVID kick of working. I will do things that I relegated or delegated to other people that I now feel I need to participate in a bigger way to make sure that it's perfect. Because when we were all together, I could look at it and we could talk about it. Now we don't have that ability. So I will literally sit and curate a list and make sure that it is perfect. List building. You have to care about data. You have to know who people are. In the old days, we went out and we met, the editor of the New York Times for lunch, and, we wined and dined. Forget it. Nobody does that anymore. If we have virtual desk meetings, that's great. If we go up to their office, that's great. But, socializing and being able to take them out and hear what they're working on, or if you get them to answer an email, you're lucky. But I think that if you're not interested in the news, if you're not curious, if you're not an upbeat person, if you don't take the time to research things and listen, PR is not for you. Oh, don't hear you.
I'm sorry, Sally, can you? Someone who has a lot of attention to detail, enjoys writing, and you don't need to necessarily have a degree in communications, but a passion for what we do is important. One of the questions we always ask is, do you have an interest in architecture and design? if someone says no, it's like, well, why are you coming here? This is what we do. We have a love for it. I'm an economics major, but I love what I do, and I've always had an interest in it. And those are key traits for us. You know, as Sally said, research and list making. It's so important. That is, you know, it's the data to the writing, and also someone who's really ready to collaborate and teamwork. You know, we're very much a team, and especially now, even agencies are collaborating together. How can we all work together and make this better? Because it's a change for everyone. There's not one person in this boat, it's the entire world. And having that as a value that we hold close to us has really helped us.
Yeah, agreed.
It sounds like research and collaboration and communication are the typical tasks that someone might do a bulk of when they first enter the field, and then even as you remain in PR, it sounds like that's something that's still a big part of both of your positions. Are there any other tasks that are maybe very critical to those formative years as someone who's new to the public relations industry that recent graduates should expect to be undertaking as they first start their positions?
Well, it totally depends on their orientation. I mean, if they're used to reading the news, we do something at my agency that I think is really fantastic. Actually, we haven't been doing it lately. We have to go back to it because, you know, being separated from one another, we haven't. But we do the clippings of the day. We do current events of what's going on in the world, and anything that's relevant to not necessarily from us, you know, what's going on in Italy. Has told us anything about, you know, a trend that's happening? Is there a wine story? Is London talking about a concert? You know, is there something we missed? I mean, right now clippings are essential because you learn about all these fabulous things online that are happening. You know, every day I hear about, you know, something that's going on backstage, front stage, a musical, Stephen Sondheim's 90th birthday. I mean, I'm doing more now than I've ever done in my life. And to keep up with the pace that I need to know of what's going on, I need a staff of 1 million, you know, to know what's happening. So I would say that depending upon the person, he or she needs to know that current events is something that he should keep at the, you know, foreground of his mind. And also, you know, if their orientation is towards being an influencer and posting a lot on social media, I would say that they could, you know, cultivate that more, but from a more objective perspective, and think about it in terms of a client rather than in terms of me. And I also think that looking at graphics and imagery and understanding what a picture conveys and how you can use that to convey a message, not about, you know, what sweater you bought, but about how a client wants to best represent himself or herself. And I also think that they really need to learn that no task is too small or too big. I mean, I started out as somebody's assistant, and I worked for a journalist for 3 years. I did everything for him, from telefaxing to faxing to typewriting to composing, you know, on computers, to photo researching, to going out and, you know, getting a story. I mean, and because I did that, when I opened up my own office years later, I knew how to do everything. I really did. There wasn't anything that I didn't know how to do. Of course, I need to keep updating myself, because telefax, nobody on this telephone conversation even knows what it is. But I don't care. I love that I know what it is. I used to want to, when the first fax machine came out, I used to want to put myself inside the fax machine and see if I could get to the other side of it.
I think I totally agree with you. You know, being able to do everything and understanding how the team works, you know, it really does help. If someone's off, being able, I can do that. And we make sure that everyone has a voice in our team. You know, if you can come in and say, have you heard about Slack? Have you heard about this new tool? I'm sure there's people on the team who haven't heard about it, and tell us how that's going to make our lives better, faster, and more efficient. We want to hear about that, because that makes us a better agency.
Yeah. I mean, when we all started out, who had done Zoom calls? I
Oh
mean,
my
and
God.
great because, we have a wonderful person on board. His name is Phil, and Phil loves technology. So Phil just makes it his business to learn about it right away and teach everybody else. And that's just terrific. Oh, don't hear you.
Sorry. I'm looking at the next few questions that we have, and they're kind of more on the lines of specific career advice and guidance. I mean, I think you've both shared plenty of that so far, but I do want to just pause here. Fatima, do we have any questions that have come in the chat box related to the public
I just
relations
wanted
industry?
some advice very quickly because I know that this didn't come up. If you do have interviews, definitely follow the company that you are being interviewed by on their social media channels. Definitely get rid of any inappropriate posts that you have on your social media because we are looking at all of it. Today, there's nobody who isn't looking at your Snapchat stories or your Instagram stories or whatever it is, or your Instagram posts or your Facebook. Young people don't care about Facebook really, and, but make sure you tidy it up because it matters, and don't show up for an interview virtual or in person without knowing about the company that you're going to see. If you are going to an in-person interview, which will happen someday in the future, do print out your resume, even though it doesn't maybe seem appropriate. The person who you're having an interview with may have lost it or forgotten where it is online. And you don't want to waste precious 5 minutes while you're all looking for it. So, and if you make a small portfolio of your work, not too much, but whatever you think is pertinent, that would be great.
100%. I think also after the interview follow up, it's always good to write a thank you, to say it was great to meet you. The interviewee might have brought someone else into that, just to say thanks, to have met Danielle, Peter, to put those extra names in to remember them. It makes a difference.
Totally.
And I would also echo that's true in our field as well. So I think even if you decide that public relations isn't where you want to apply for a job, I think that it's a good practice for any field.
Absolutely.
So before we move on, Fatima, do we have any questions that have come in so far that we want to stop and address here?
There are no questions that came in at the moment, but if anyone would like to have ask a question, feel free, and hopefully Rosalind and Sally would be happy to answer it.
It's funny, I don't even see a chat box on mine.
It should be at the bottom of the screen. It might be a little bit different for any attendees versus panelists, but just right in the chat box is where you can ask any questions that you have. Yeah. So I think we've already talked about this. I mean, this is a perfect segue as you both gave great advice when you're applying for a job. What websites, publications, resources would you recommend to students or recent graduates to utilize as they begin their job search, or they just want to be familiar with pertinent publications in the industry?
Well, so in PR, I would say that, one of my questions that I always pose to anybody who I'm interviewing is, do you read? And I would say that whatever their local newspaper is, they should be familiar with it, even though newspapers seem totally irrelevant to some. They're very relevant, and they're doing incredibly useful things. I mean, the New York Times, everybody should be looking at online on a daily basis. You should be getting alerts from, several news organizations, from the New York Times to CNN to whatever it is. But let's say you're from Boston, the Boston Globe, San Francisco, LA Times. I mean, and if you're interested in a particular kind of PR, like, for example, entertainment PR, subscribe to Variety and know what's going on in your industry. If you're interested in the wine world, then get your, wine and design publications. I mean, we're Architectural Digest, and Elle Decor, and all of these great magazines have great stories every month, and you can be looking at some of them online. But the New Yorker, New York Magazine, all of these national, Wall Street Journal, I mean, I think it's really important. In terms of we subscribe to something called Media Bistro, which does also have all these webinars on what's going on. And also LinkedIn is a fantastic way of staying connected in your news that's pertinent and connecting with people. So I'll go on LinkedIn 5 or 6 times a day and look and see what my colleagues are posting. And I actually came upon something that was, I don't want to politicize this meeting at all, but it occurred to me that corporations are using LinkedIn as an instrument, and they're being very pro-Trump at the moment, which I hadn't realized before in this.
Yes, I agree. Reading, in the sector that you're in, if you're interested in a certain sector, as Sally said. Also, other than that, also looking at the company social, like who are they following? What are they posting about? Are we posting about our clients? Are we posting about things that are interested in? And have a look at that. Do kind of deep dive and do a forensics into that and look and follow them too, because that makes a difference, because you're understanding the conversations that are happening on a regular basis.
I had a slight emergency, which is something, I'm not being rude at all, but a client is writing me, and that's something that I think is an extremely interesting thing for everybody to understand, that in times like this, if a client is on a call and they ask you a question, even though I'm doing something, my client is always more important than something I'm doing. So Roz and Tam and I'm paying 100%. I'm just trying to let them know so that they can do what they need to do, and excuse me for that.
No, I think that's an excellent example of the need to be able to successfully multitask in this field.
I am known for that.
So I just want to be a little retrospective for a second. What do you wish that you both knew before graduation? Is there anything you wish you could?
I wish I knew that there was going to be a virus in 2020 that was called COVID-19, and I wish I knew how to find a cure for it. And I wish I knew Bill Gates and people like that who were, that's really would be my biggest wish, would be to have avoided this. I feel like this generation, and nobody like this generation, has seen more big blown up events than I did in my entire life growing up. My son's first day, I told Roz this, my son's first day of pre-K was on 9/11. He has spent every day, even though he doesn't live in fear at all, and he's totally out there and courageous, but his entire life has been, one big Katrina, 9/11, now COVID, and I think it's made people stronger. But what I'm so happy that I did everything I wanted to do. I traveled across borders. I got on trains in Iceland and Luxembourg and went, at night alone on a train across Europe. I would never do that now or wish it on anybody, but not because of COVID, but because of the dangers that, we have learned exist in our world. So I think protection and how we were able to grow up in a free world, I really do believe that we did in my generation. And I would say that if I knew that this was ahead, I would have found a way to get rid of all guns and violence and only dealt with peace and love.
I like that.
Yeah. It's so true. I wish every one of these people who's listening all the very best, and the stronger they are and the more they can learn. And, we haven't talked about what we think that would be good for them to be doing. But, if you want to ask that question, Tam, and next, I'm happy to address it. And Roz can, go forward and answer this particular question.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question to ask. I think a lot of people right now are trying to make the most of this extra free time they might be having. What do you suggest people do with some extra time that would better position themselves to learn more about the public relations industry, or even find a position down the road that's related to their specific interests in PR?
One thing we were touching on about, cleaning up your social media, etc. Some candidates, interns, as well as employees who come through that have their own websites, it's really useful to be able to go on there, see what they're posting about, like what is their interest, even their writing, the writing levels that they put in, the articles that they're writing about. And that, if you have time, create a website. It's a wonderful thing to learn. To learn a little bit of HTML is so useful. Being able to practice writing, researching. You are, in essence, creating your own publication by using, your own sources and bringing it all into one place. So take that time to build something that will help you going forward.
Yeah, I agree. And also own it. I love that, saying, just be the owner of something that you believe in, whether it's wine or food or travel or film or, whatever it is, you have a special interest in. Own it, know as much about it as you can, and, use those hashtags. Everything's a hashtag now, but I learned a lot from Italians. Before I knew anything about, Italy, the first thing that I learned was image. The Italians are so big on caring about image, about everything. Sophia Loren, there's a reason why she's, the icon of Italy and always will be, even though she's not, the young and beautiful actress as she was. Now she's an older beautiful actress. But I think that imagery and using your graphics and your logos for yourself and the way that you represent yourself, whether it's by your speech or your writing or the way that you present yourself in your posts, I think you have to be very conscious of owning it and living up to what it is that you're interested in. So I think this time could be really used to build up who you are. I have an intern who, I think Alessandra is on the call. She arrived from Italy just when it was in its darkest days in Italy, and when it had not started in New York yet, but it was just starting. She was not allowed to come into the office one day. She has been sitting in New York on her own, God bless her, for 2 months. And I have to say, she has used this time to study English, work with me, be able to work on her courses that she's taking in university. And she has learned how to self-discipline herself by making herself her best friend. And I really think that this is a time where everybody needs to look inside themselves, see what they're good at, learn their best traits, and hone in on them and make them their traits that they move forward on. Are you good at public speaking? Great. Are you not good at writing? Take your challenge every night and try and write a little story. Writing is so important. You can't pitch a journalist without knowing how to construct a good email or good thoughts in your mind. I didn't say this before, but I started out as a Montessori teacher in Italy. I took Montessori training. I love Montessori, and I just think it's a fantastic way of approaching life. And what Montessori teaches you is how to organize your mind, how to, put your chair back in after you get up to eat when you're 2 years old, from eating. And once you're organized as a person, your mind is organized.
I think you both have had very varied and interesting experiences. I mean, just from your travels and from your past positions and the different areas of expertise that you've gained in various different positions, whether it's Montessori or working in Holland or just different aspects like that. Is there anything that you wish you could go back and do all over again?
It's funny you're asking that question. I wouldn't have thought so until now. I used to really want to go back to, I studied French my entire elementary school, middle school, high school, and I learned Italian by speaking French. I mean, when I got to Italy, and at 16, it was a natural jumping board to be able to speak Italian more fluently quickly because I was able to use my French. And so I used to think, well, wow, I'd love to go to Paris over the summer and take French again and live in the Marais and, just feel like I was a student again. And, I went to Torino during the 2006 Olympics. I was the PR agency for the Winter Olympics of 2006 for America. And that was one of the most incredible experiences. My last experience before COVID was I went to the Berlin Film Festival and worked as a PR person for the head of the jury, who was Jeremy Irons, and that was unbelievable. And, I had no idea that I was going to come home to this. But I think that now that this has happened, my priorities are, yes, still in being able to visit wonderful places that I've spent a lifetime doing, but they're also to be able to experience them in a different way, in a more precise way, in a quieter way, in a more fulfilled way, maybe going without any even goal in mind and just living each day at a time.
I don't think I regret looking back. I think one thing that I have had to push over the years is, studying a certain degree or being in a certain sector. Sometimes recruiters or industries like to pigeonhole you. I came from fashion, I moved to media. I moved from media to architecture and design. And even though it's still in public relations the whole way along, a lot of people who I initially spoke to when I wanted to move out of industries and have a change of like, no, you must stay in fashion. No, you must stay in fashion. It's like, no, if you want to forge your own path, do it. Don't let anyone say that you can't. You can make those decisions. And so push forward if you want to, and you'll get there.
I agree.
That's great advice. I'm cognizant that we have about 5 minutes left. So Fatima, I want to double check and make sure we don't have any questions waiting before I ask one more to wrap up.
Oh, I think you can continue with your question because
really
there are currently still no questions.
Question. That is just so odd. I'm on these Zoom calls with millions of questions. There.
Well,
Maybe they're waiting for the Q&A session or something.
Well, the Q&A session is certainly open. If anyone has any questions afterwards, obviously we can certainly forward your contact details, details along. But let's see, what else haven't we touched on yet? Let's talk a little bit about some interns who have interned at both your organizations. Do you still stay in touch with past interns, and what have they gone on to do in the future?
Yeah, I mean, I have unbelievable connections to my interns. I see them, all the time on social media specifically, but many of them have come back to New York and visited. As I said, some of them have been employed, but they all use the organization as a stepping stone towards, what they'd like to do in the future. And I do think that in some ways, working and doing an internship is a mentor program. So, they're using you as a mentor. And I do believe that just like I started out with one of the most incredible women in the industry. Her name was Lois Smith. She had represented just about every famous, from Marlon Brando to Robert Redford. She opened Sundance with Robert I mean, she's just was a remarkable person. And I had the really true, wonderful time of working with her and learning from her. And she was kind of the earth mother to the stars. And I remember Sean Penn coming up to the office and asking Lois advice and thinking, wow, one day I would love to be somebody that people ask advice from. And I think that, that's how these people are perceiving us. I can't really give advice to people that I don't know because it's hard to do that. And that's why these sessions are useful. But people that I have worked with, I am definitely in touch with and definitely give advice to as I can. But many of them are working, in-house at companies. One woman just became a really high up person at Google. Another person is, in a big fashion company. Another is working for an agency. So many of the people that have, I would say I have more than 100 interns that are somewhere out there working somewhere. And it's wonderful because I can reach out to them and ask their advice.
It's, interns have just been such a rewarding experience for us, either from them coming on to staff or going on to different careers. We love touching base with them. We, as Sally said, we have interns in Italy, across the whole of Europe, and, Asia as well. And just so many levels, and we know that we'll cross paths with them. Even in my previous career, I had an intern who now is in the UK, who now has his own agency on the West Coast in architecture and design. And we constantly chat. And, it's been a decade. We're now back from fashion into architecture and design, and we constantly chat because we're crossing paths daily.
That's great.
That's great to hear there's still those connections afterwards as well. And strong connections, it sounds like, too. I'm looking at it, seems like we've had a slew of questions that have come in the last few minutes. We definitely won't get to them all before 3 o'clock. So I will, we can follow up and send some of these via writing afterwards. But I'm just gonna pick out one now before we do wrap up. That maybe a theme that seems to be in a few of these questions. What struggles are your businesses facing in lockdown, and how are you able to motivate, or how would you recommend people motivate themselves during this time at home? Like what should they? You've already talked about what they should be doing. What should they not be doing during this time? That seems to be a theme of a few questions, and how to avoid
motivate ourselves, and how they should be motivating themselves.
I think a little bit of both. How your organization, how you motivate yourself to continue to be learning and growing while you're at home, and how your organizations are navigating through lockdown and some things like that.
It's a great question, and it's a great question. Not that easy. I mean, I think that Roz may be approaching it in a different way than we are, but this hit me very hard. I have to say, I was struck by it and disappointed, to say the least, that this could possibly happen. I'm very politically oriented, and I just couldn't face the fact that, nobody saw this coming, and we did so little to deal with it. So that said, we're into month 2 here in the United States, where, I have no choice but to motivate myself and to stay connected. And, I want to, but by the same token, I want to also take responsibility as a citizen and care for, the other human beings that are unemployed, and, that I don't have a way to eat. And I mean, it's really hard to keep yourself not wanting to go out in the streets and serve meals to all these people that don't have, so it's a challenge. And I think the best we can all do is our best. And maybe this is a time that a lot of people are going to decide to go into nonprofit PR, which is an area that's going to be really needy, and looking at, food banks and how they can be helping, other organizations that are working for the better good. It's going to be a big need coming up.
We've been seeing it, we have a small office in Milan, and when their lockdown started prior to New York, they had been telling us about what was happening and how dire the situation was. So, when it came to us, it was difficult, but we made sure we were connected. And one advice they gave us was keep a routine, whether it be an exercise class in the morning or making sure you have a shower and get changed each day. It makes you just feel like you're going to work, and you have that ability to keep the routine, and it helps keep structure in that way. But everyone is impacted differently by it, so we just have to be empathetic towards that and understanding. And that's why we have our daily touch base with internally in the team, and we've also created a Be Well series of activities, from armchair yoga that we can do to happy hours to looking at, how can we lead a more Be Well life. So that's something that we've created and working together.
Excellent. I see that we're just over time, and I know that you're both very busy, and I appreciate you both so much for taking this hour to speak with us. If it's okay, we'll maybe forward over some of these questions that we didn't get a chance to address on the webinar to both of you for your insight and expertise. But thank you both again for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. And as someone who doesn't have much of a background in public relations, I learned a lot, so I can speak comfortably for the audience and say everyone.
You have an instinctive PR background, even though you don't know that you do. I mean, so helpful with interns that have wanted to come over and be a part of our reality. And I think that communicating is the heart of PR, and you're a great communicator, and you're doing a great service, I'm sure, by doing these webinars for everybody else. Thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And there's a whole team here at InterExchange that is working to make sure we can support everyone during this time. That actually kind of segues me quickly to our wrap up. Just a reminder for anyone who is on the call, we are going to do another webinar next week. The title is What Area of Business Should You Specialize In? So we'll have a few different hosts from different areas within business, and they're ranging from HR to business development and marketing. So this also might be a good crossover for people who are interested in both public relations and communications, and also some areas of business. So if anyone is interested, we'll send the information in the follow-up to this. It's next Wednesday at 3 o'clock. But yes, just to follow up, thank you, Roz. Thank you, Sally, so much. And to everyone, be well and stay safe.
Be well. Thank you, Tom.
Yeah.